Hey, Jarek here. I'm congested. Don't celebrate for that. It feels miserable. I spent the last week sick. By the time you see this video in about a week and a half, I will be fully recovered, but for now, my voice may sound a little weird. Gaming in 2023 feels a lot more negative than it used to be. What do you consider the golden age of gaming? People would give many different answers, with the most common very likely being the late 2000s. However, the least common would definitely be modern gaming. It seems that every day new full-budget games come out that just don't meet expectations or even function at all. There's three questions that have been on my mind for a long while now. Am I enjoying games less as I get older? Were games actually better back then? And do we really need AAA studios anymore? All three of these questions don't have a simple answer. But what does have a simple answer is, should you buy Into the AM clothing? Because that's today's sponsor, Into the AM. I have no idea what I was sick with this last week. It wasn't COVID, all my tests came back negative, but the symptoms left me with the worst sinus congestion I have ever had in my life, and occasional bouts of being incredibly tired and cold. My solution was to put on one of my Into the AM hoodies and lay in bed. Even when sick, I wear these clothes. That's not a joke. So at this point, I've worn these clothes pretty much anywhere. Sick in bed, mountain biking, monster truck shows, trampoline parks. These things are soft, they're incredibly comfortable, they stretch, they don't rip, and best of all, they look real good. If you want to get some of these clothes for yourself, you can get 10% off site-wide by going to intotheam.com/dragonshirts. And this 10% off stacks on top of whatever deals they're currently having. Alright, let's get back to the video. Am I enjoying games less as I get older? Honestly, the answer is yes. But not for the reasons you're thinking. People change a lot as they age. I am a very different person now at 32 years old than I was back when I was 22. My interests change, the trends change. Also, I'm a bit of a unique situation because I assume most people aren't playing games with the mindset of making a video on them afterward as their job. Genuine advice, I really wouldn't recommend turning your hobby into a job. It definitely does take some fun away from it. But if I ignore that portion, a lot of the reason why I would have less fun in gaming today is because I would stick with what's comfortable rather than branching into something new. I enjoy gaming a lot away from this channel. People ask why I never cover anything other than first-person shooters, and it's purely because nothing else gets views here. People subscribe to this channel for first-person shooters, so that's what I cover, and for what it's worth, it is still my favorite genre. But outside of this channel, I'm running tournaments for games like Rivals of Aether and laying in bed playing Pokemon all the time. Some of my fondest gaming memories involve recent games, like Nexomon. If you like Pokemon, this franchise is quite literally the best Pokemon experience you can get. I know it's not literally Pokemon, but it basically is, you know what I mean. So for a little while, I was thinking, maybe I just like shooters less. That was until Atomic Heart released, and I came to another realization. I didn't like shooters less. The shooter trends just changed. What I really enjoy in first-person shooters are linear, story-driven, atmospheric first-person shooters. Games like Half-Life, the original Prey, Fear, and those games don't exist much anymore. What does exist is the millionth Battle Royale. I have absolutely no interest in those styles of games. So instead, the solution really should have been focus on the other games you do enjoy that are still coming out. I'm not enjoying games less. Just the games I enjoy are being made less. But of course that's too simplistic of an answer too. Everyone is a different person, and a lot goes on in your life as you get older. As you get older, you will have a full-time job and possibly kids. The amount of time you have to sit down and enjoy a game disappears. This is why games like Call of Duty are still massively popular. That's something you can sit down and play at the end of your workday for an hour or so. And even then, how you're feeling outside of your gaming experience blends into your gaming experience. If you had a bad day at work, you're probably still going to have a bad time playing games, especially if they're competitive multiplayer games. As negative as this might sound, it may not be that you're enjoying games less, just that you're enjoying life less. This leads me to my second question. Were games actually better back then? What I personally consider was the golden age of gaming was the mid to late 2000s. There are so many reasons for this, but I think the biggest one is something I didn't touch up on in the previous question. Games were evolving rapidly at this time. See, when you're younger, everything is novel and new. If you look in my comments, there will always be someone that will defend a game. No matter how bad that game is, they will defend it by saying, "I played this game when I was young and it was awesome. Your opinion's stupid and wrong." Despite the fact that they haven't played the game in 20 or so odd years, and children are terrible at judging a game's quality. After all, everything is new to them, everything is novel. But part of that is because games back then were new and novel. In 2004, some of the biggest first-person shooters were Half-Life 2, Halo 2, and Doom 3. Half-Life had already established itself as being the most immersive storytelling first-person shooter on the market, but Half-Life 2 cemented itself as being one of the most revolutionary games as far as tech is concerned. Almost every game before this had the world static. You couldn't interact with everything like you could in Half-Life 2, and they even gave you a toy to do this. Doom 3 aimed to push that immersion just like Half-Life did, and it did so with some of the best lighting we had ever seen. And then there's Halo 2. Halo 2 effectively invented online console multiplayer. This was such a magical time, talking to complete strangers with everybody's garbage mic being open 24/7. And this era of innovation and fresh experiences continued. 2007 is always mentioned when we talk about some of the best years in gaming. Halo's amazing online experience continued with Halo 3. A new amazing online experience popped up with Call of Duty 4, which would eventually take over Halo as the biggest multiplayer game on the market. That wouldn't happen until Reach came out. Halo 3 was still solidly up there. Halo's quote-unquote demise would not come until much later. I do see people try to spin this as Call of Duty immediately taking over, and that's not what happened. Crysis came out that same year, and we wouldn't see any other games matching its graphical fidelity until 4 or 5 years later. The Orange Box released that year, arguably the best bang for your buck in gaming history. And Portal was a new experience. Again, my point here is that games were genuinely innovative and fresh experiences that we had never gotten before. However, if you look back at the last 10 years, I don't feel the same way. Gaming has definitely started to stagnate. That isn't to say these experiences are inherently bad, just that innovation has been rarer. Why is this? Well, you could theorize many different reasons. The one that pops up into people's heads right away is money. The gaming industry is huge now, and seemingly your product doesn't matter as long as you get money in the end. So why would you take the chance and innovate, do something new that people haven't experienced before, instead of making the thing you know they'll enjoy? And if they don't enjoy it, they'll still buy it and complain about it anyway. Or even better, why not release a game that's not done and then shove in-game purchases so you can buy the rest of the game? It is so rare in today's multiplayer gaming age to find a game that is done and complete on launch. The most frustrating thing about all of this is that the Season Pass system is honestly not a bad system. I mean, think about it. How did DLC work during 2007 times when it came to multiplayer content? It was normally just a multiplayer map pack that you had to buy for $10 to $15 that would only give you 4 maps. That's terrible value. Not everyone's going to buy the maps, so you usually didn't play them anyway. With the Season Pass, however, you don't even have to buy anything and you get more content. Even better, we started seeing what is arguably the most important thing to most multiplayer first-person shooters: more guns. And that was incredibly rare to get in DLC early on. The problem is, this system relies on a lot of trust of the developer and publisher, with no one holding them accountable. And with gaming only getting bigger and bigger, and with companies only wanting to get more and more money, you can see where this went. But I still haven't really answered the question: were the games themselves actually better back then? Well, I can list some of the best games of all time that we remember, but that era also had some real bad games. And as I'm sure many people have pointed out in the comments already, a lot of those games weren't finished either. The difference is the sheer amount of them that are unfinished nowadays. Because when we do get a solid finished game, these are amazing experiences. The two that immediately come to mind are Doom Eternal and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. These two are some of my favorite experiences I have ever had, and they both came out the same year in 2020. In fact, 2020 was an amazing year for gaming. Thank God that kept a lot of us sane. And when you look at them in a vacuum, gaming is of course way more advanced now. Graphics have never been this good, budgets have never been this big. So were games actually better back then compared to now? Well, if you're only comparing the best of the best, no, but overall I would have to say yes. As gaming was growing, studios were still mostly allowed to experiment and make their dream games. And during the 2000s, we had a lot more studios that were considered AA studios. Unfortunately, a lot of them could not live through the 2008 depression, or they got gobbled up by some large AAA publisher, which eventually killed them anyway. This leads nicely into my next question. Do we really need AAA studios anymore? The answer to that is it depends. Are you playing on console? Well, then yes, you absolutely need AAA studios. They hold your entire ecosystem alive. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo control everything you are doing, and without them, your system would not exist. So obviously, when it comes to the console platforms, you absolutely need AAA studios. However, this question becomes a lot more nuanced if you game on PC like I do. What is it that you want out of gaming? Do you care about the gaming market being huge? Well, then if you do, then obviously you need AAA studios. They're the ones with billions of dollars to pump into projects. And sometimes those projects may not be as polished as ever, but still end up as pretty interesting games. Atomic Heart is what really sparked me making this video for this exact reason. However, most of my favorite gaming experiences over the last 5 years or so have all been indie experiences. Indie games are carrying certain genres extremely hard. And in my case, I really enjoy half-likes. You almost never see these in the AAA space anymore. And there's not a ton of them in the indie space, but they do exist. You have games like Industria and Adaka, which I love. So if you just want fun games, then technically you don't need AAA studios. And for a while, I was kind of on board with that idea. But again, playing Atomic Heart really reminded me what AAA games can offer. The scope of that game is simply much bigger than anything the devs of Industria or Adaka could do. And that's common sense. They have billions of dollars to pump into these games. In Atomic Heart's case, they had an actual vision for a game they really wanted to make. It's obvious that the game wasn't just to make a quick buck. However, let's be real. It would be pretty dumb to say we don't need AAA studios, because I can give you an example of what happens when they don't exist. VR gaming. VR gaming is going to be niche, and it's going to stay niche forever, just because of what it is. This is coming from someone who absolutely adores VR gaming, by the way. The fact that you need to buy a headset, which does cost as much as your console, and the fact that you do need a good gaming PC to really enjoy VR inherently makes it hard to get into. And that's without all the other problems that a new player would experience, like say VR sickness they have to overcome. If you're about to say that you don't need a gaming PC for VR, technically true, but you're not getting the VR gaming experience without having a PC to play the games that actually matter. The reason I bring up VR is for two reasons. One, this is where a lot of the half-likes went. VR is inherently incredibly immersive, so my style of game naturally fits on this platform. There's quite a few of them. Everyone knows about Boneworks, but Vertigo Remastered and Vertigo 2 are some of the best games I have ever played in my life. If you altered Vertigo 1 and 2 to be regular first-person shooter flat-screen games, they would be almost just as good, and they definitely would sell more just because the market's bigger. But that there is my second reason for mentioning VR. There is no AAA investment in VR. When AAA studios get involved, there is way more marketing, way more advertisements, and way more interest. And we saw this in VR with Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx was an incredibly good storytelling game, but I would argue there's way other better first-person shooters on VR that no one even knows of. And since AAA devs aren't getting involved in VR, there's tons of gamers that have been claiming that VR gaming is dead. Side rant, please learn what dead actually means. It gets so tiring and so annoying to constantly hear this game is dead when it has an average player count of 300 to 500 a day. A smaller player base doesn't mean dead. Dead means you literally can't play the game. Those are two very different things. So to say VR gaming is dead is massively exaggerating. With that said, it is way, way smaller than regular gaming. And the answer isn't entirely because AAA studios aren't involved, but that certainly is a big reason for it. So do we really need AAA studios anymore? Well, not really to enjoy gaming, but to say we don't need them would be pretty dumb. Because while we don't need them directly, we do need their money. Money makes the world go round, some things will never change. To circle back to the title of this video, how bad is modern gaming really? Well, there's no easy answer here. Again, it depends. If you're only looking at the AAA space, it's pretty damn bad. You may get the occasional real good game, but increasingly, every year we're seeing more and more broken games that try to get as much money out of you through microtransactions that don't make the game any better. And I really can't help but feel like the old man saying things like, boy, I'm so glad I grew up with Half-Life instead of Fortnite, but I'm sure they're gonna look at Fortnite the same way I look at Halo. With that said, if you step away from AAA gaming arguably has never been this good. Remember when I said AA studios couldn't survive through the 2008 recession? Well, indie studios have filled that void. All of those unique games that was somebody's vision in their head are just indie games now. And if you're playing on PC, gaming has never been better in this regard. There's no overall message to this video. The answer really just is it depends. I don't know how to end this without a message, so I guess I'll just say if you're feeling down on gaming as a whole and you're just not enjoying it as much, then either A, try stepping away from gaming for a little bit, find some new hobbies outside of the house, touch grass maybe, or B, experiment within gaming. Find some new genres that you've never tried before. Maybe you thought you'd not enjoy them, but you'd never played them before, and in which case you wouldn't know until you try. As for now, thank you Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Go to intotheam.com/dragonshirts to get 10% off site-wide. Thanks to the rest of you for coming to my Twitch streams. You can follow me on Twitch if you want to. It's over there on the bottom right. Shoutouts to my YouTube members, those are the names on screen right now. They get early viewing for a very cheap price. If this interests you, check that join button down by the subscribe button. If you want to go follow me on Twitter, my tag is in the bottom left, Jarek_Dragon. Thank all of you for watching. I'll see you next video.